Hey there, and welcome back to Insights from Inside. I'm Amanda Armstrong, and I'm so glad that you're here. Today, we're going to talk about my favorite time of year. Thanksgiving is right around the corner, and everywhere you look, there's gratitude prompts. You're seeing things in commercials, ads, maybe signage all over the place, asking us, what are you thankful for? And if you're like me, your kid probably says something like my dog and video games. But here's what I really want to know. Can gratitude actually build resilience? Or is it just feel-good fluff that makes us feel like good parents for about 5 minutes? Well, I've got some good news. The research is clear. Gratitude practices, when done right, build the exact skills that help kids bounce back from failure, persist through challenges, and develop a growth mindset. And I'll be honest with you, resilience isn't just something I read about in research articles. It's something I've had to live through in some really hard and messy ways. So today I'm going to show you how to turn gratitude from a surface level holiday tradition into a powerful tool for raising resilient kids. And I'm going to share a personal story about what resilience has looked like in my own life. So let's dive in. Before we get into the science, I want to share something personal because I don't want this episode to feel like, here's what the research says, go do it perfectly. That's not real life. And I have had not the easiest of life. Growing up was a little difficult. I was on my own for a long time, and I've seen a lot of trauma. One of the biggest turning points for me was a car accident the Saturday before Easter in 2019. At first, everyone was super focused on my neck. I ended up having a disc replaced, and I had nerve damage in my arms. At first, everyone was super focused on my neck injury, and I ended up having to have a neck surgery where one of my discs was replaced, and I have nerve damage in my arms and hands. I can't really feel things properly. I was struggling to do some basic things like fill my hydro flask without dropping it, or even hold a pen correctly. And some days I still struggle with those things. Because the neck injury was so serious, everyone missed the concussion that I had. After surgery and during physical therapy, my therapist noticed something strange. My left eye was lagging behind my right eye when I moved. And I had been complaining of headaches since the accident, but everyone just assumed it was my neck. I figured the nausea when I was reading or scrolling and my inability to look at a screen was just part of the headaches associated with the neck injury. And at the time I was teaching advanced history, my students wrote a lot of papers, and suddenly reading it and giving feedback took twice as long. It was exhausting, and it made my job feel 1,000 times harder. My physical therapist finally said, you need to go back to a neurologist. And when I did, I was sent to what I jokingly called brain school, which is occupational therapy for concussion recovery. So every Thursday for over a year, I sat with my therapist and worked on things that sound so simple. Peripheral vision, getting my eyes to track together again, rebuilding my short-term memory. It took over a year in those sessions. It took over a year before my therapist released me from my brain school. And as a teacher and as a mom and just as a human who was used to just pushing through, that season was brutal. I felt slow, I felt broken, and I just felt like it was never going to end. Me and my fiance were planning our wedding at the time, and we were searching for houses, and we were doing things like making sure that the primary bedroom was on the first floor. And when I wrote my vows for my wedding, I talked about my health struggles and how I was going to do my best to make sure that I was healthy as I possibly could be so that he didn't have to take care of me. It was a very dark moment in my life. I just really felt like I was going to be dependent on other people forever. And it was just basic things like reading, and it was horribly frustrating. Around the same time, Frozen 2 came out. And it was actually on my birthday, so we went to go see it. And I fell in love with Anna even more than I already had. I loved Anna in the first Frozen. You know, anybody who's going to punch somebody's lights out for being a jerk is, you know, on my happy list. And so this time, Anna's journey was even more special to me, especially in the time that I was in the middle of when the movie came out. And there's this scene where she's in a dark cave. Olaf is gone. He's disappeared. Kristoff is lost singing in the woods. And she is completely alone. She doesn't even know if Elsa's alive. She doesn't know anything or where she's going or if she would ever see her family again. And she has no idea if she can actually solve the central problem of the story. And in that moment, at literal rock bottom, because she was in a cave, she chooses to do the next right thing. Not the perfect thing, not the guaranteed to work thing, just the next right thing. Obviously, it's Disney, so we know they ultimately solve the problem and live happily ever after. But what's significant about that moment is honest truth. Even in your darkest moments, when you are lost, cold, lonely, and confused, the one thing you can control is taking the next step. You can do the next right thing and then see what happens. That is resilience. And for me, in that season after that accident, resilience looked exactly like that. Showing up to brain school every Thursday, reading one more student paper, even if it took me twice as long, letting myself be frustrated and still choosing to keep going. The journey to building resilience is often awful and miserable. It doesn't feel inspiring in the moment, but it is just a moment in time. It's a place you will never be again because you will learn from it. And that's where gratitude really comes from. Gratitude doesn't mean you're thankful the hard things happened. It means you can look back and say, I'm grateful I learned something from that dark cave. I'm grateful I took one more tiny step forward. Knowing that the smallest step can eventually lead you out of that cave, that's growth mindset gratitude in real life. Now that we're grounded in real life and no longer in Disney, let's talk about what the research actually says about gratitude and a growth mindset. Studies show that gratitude practices improve well-being, reduce stress, and increase motivation. But here's what matters for resilience. Gratitude shifts attention from what's missing to what's working. Also in 2019, a huge study was published that found that growth mindset interventions improved achievement, especially for struggling students. The key is teaching students to view challenges as opportunities and to value effort over outcomes. Gratitude practices do the same thing. When kids practice being grateful for effort, strategy, and learning, they're training their brains to notice progress, even when it's small. They're learning to value persistence, even when it's hard. And they learn to see failure as feedback, not as identity. And that is resilience. So the question isn't, should we practice gratitude? It's, are we practicing the right kind of gratitude? And let's be honest, most gratitude practices are outcome focused. When we sit at Thanksgiving dinner and we say what we're grateful for, things like, I'm grateful for my family, I'm grateful for my home, I'm grateful for my toys, there's nothing wrong with those sentences, but it doesn't build resilience. It just lists things. And if your kid is neurodiverse, if they face more setbacks, more frustration, more I can't do this moments, they need more than a list of things that they have. They need tools to bounce back. And that's where growth mindset gratitude comes in. So let's get practical. Here are 5 gratitude practices that actually build a growth mindset and resilience in kids. Practice 1 is having gratitude for effort, not just the outcomes. Instead of asking things like, what are you grateful for today? Try asking, what's something you worked hard on today, even if it didn't turn out perfect? This question teaches kids that effort is valuable, even when the outcome isn't what they hoped for. Carol Dweck's research found that praising effort, not talent, leads to greater persistence and resilience. Here's an example from my own home. Riley struggled through a math worksheet and only got half of the problems right. Instead of focusing on the grade, I asked, what are you grateful you tried today? And he said, I'm grateful I didn't give up, even though it was really hard. That is a growth mindset gratitude. Practice 2 is finding ways to have gratitude for mistakes and learning. Instead of avoiding talk of failure, try this. What's a mistake you made today that taught you something? This reframes failure as valuable. Research shows that people with growth mindsets are more open to feedback and learn more from mistakes. Here's another example. Let's say your kid left his backpack at school again. Instead of lecturing them, ask, what did you learn from this? Hopefully his response is something like, I learned I need to set a reminder on my phone. And then you can ask, what are you grateful for about this mistake? And hopefully the response may be something like, I guess I'm grateful I figured out a solution. That is growth mindset gratitude. Practice 3 is developing gratitude for strategies, not just success. So instead of saying, I'm grateful I got an A, try, I'm grateful I used a strategy that helped me. This teaches kids how they approach challenges matters more than the outcome. So, for example, if your kid comes home and they got a really great grade on a spelling test, instead of just celebrating the A and putting it on the refrigerator, ask something like, what strategy did you use to study? You might get something like writing the words 5 times a day, I did rainbow words, or something like that. And then you could ask, that's super smart. And saying something like, I'm grateful you found a strategy that works for you. Now that kid knows that strategy, not the grade, is what matters. Practice 4 is gratitude for persistence, especially after failure. Instead of, I'm grateful I won, try, I'm grateful I kept trying even when it was hard. This builds resilience, and research shows that people with growth mindsets persist longer after setbacks because they view challenges as opportunities, not threats. So let's say your kiddo tries out for the school play and they didn't get the part that they wanted and they're devastated. At dinner, you can ask, what are you grateful for about trying out? Hopefully the response you get is something like, I'm grateful I was brave enough to audition, even though I was scared. And if you're teaching through this moment, you may have to say that sentence yourself at first. Eventually, your kiddos will start picking up on the same language that you're putting out there for them to listen to. Practice 5 is having gratitude for growth, not just achievement. Instead of something like, I'm grateful I'm good at math, you could try something like, I'm grateful I'm getting better at math. This reinforces the belief that abilities grow over time, which is the core of growth mindset. So instead of saying, I'm super bad at reading, hopefully your kid can get to a point where they say, I'm getting better at reading. That shift from fixed, I'm bad, to growth, which is I'm getting better, is everything. Let's talk about that Thanksgiving gratitude practice. This is something that you can do any day. It doesn't have to be Thanksgiving. Instead of the traditional, what are you thankful for? Go around the table and share one thing you're grateful you tried this year, even if it didn't work. Share one mistake you're grateful for because it taught you something. And share one way you've grown and not necessarily achieved, grown. This practice does 3 things. It normalizes failure because everyone shares a mistake. It celebrates effort, not just the outcome. And it reinforces the growth mindset, which is focusing on learning, not just the success. And here's the beautiful part. When you model this yourself, you're teaching your kids that everything is learning, including you. And here's the beautiful part. When you model this yourself, you're teaching your kids that everyone is learning, including you. All right, friend, here's your challenge for this week. Try the growth mindset gratitude practice with your family. Share one thing you're grateful you tried, one mistake you're grateful for, and one way that you've grown this year. And here's the key. You have to model it yourself. Share your own tries, mistakes, and growth. Show your kids that resilience isn't about being perfect. It's about learning, trying, and growing. Because that's what gratitude is really all about. Noticing that we're all becoming better versions of ourselves, one try at a time. Thanks for listening to Insights from Insight. If this episode resonated with you, share it with another parent who needs to hear it. And I will see you next week.